Hello, and welcome to the Santaland podcast. I created it just for you. I'm your host, Tony Felice. In each episode, I'll read to you for 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about what we just heard. Like the cricket in my story, I'll guide you through a grown-up fairy tale, one that explores ideas of existence, identity, and the soul's journey through trauma, and the transformative power of love. By the end, you'll have heard my whole story, a sneak peek into the creative process of bringing a book to life. Maybe we'll read other books together. But for now, follow the wise cricket and discover the Santaland within yourself, a place of hope, connection, and peace that's already inside of you. This podcast is especially made for those like me who feel a little different and maybe talk about math at weddings or philosophy at funerals. And like me, maybe you have a loving husband, or a wife, or somebody else that loves you. If not, we're here to love you, because you're in good company, my dear friends, here in Santaland. Hello, and welcome back to Santaland. We are on to Chapter 3, entitled, A Chirp in Time Saves 9. A beautiful day passed. I sat on the windowsill just out of sight. It was precisely 9:45 in the morning, and Tom was seated at his desk in the barn/office. He asked himself out loud, "What is the value of vibrating at the frequency of resistance?" And then after a pause shouted, "So what?" But he did care. "It's a quantum thing," he said to the sea. It blinked blue. He thought, "It'll come. It always does." He relaxed into a secret, thinking nothing's missing just yet to be discovered. "Infinity plus one is the most thoughtful of gifts," I sang to him. I think he knew it, so I followed with, "If you borrow something, then it must be honored," I sang to him, wanting to help. His frustrations mounted, temples twitched, his knees began to dance, sweat beaded behind them, and his bare feet struck a staccato on the cold floor. He typed, going cheap and literal. "Once upon a time, blah, blah, blah." He flung himself across the room in his chair, spinning. He stopped short of the island cabinet in the center of the room, raised his feet and pushed off it to skid back to his desk. I narrowly escaped harm and jumped to the other side of the room. Tom deleted the sentence. Cheap shots never felt good. How's that for a heck of a beginning, he thought to himself. He started a new paragraph. This time, he typed out each letter as if it were a dash or a period or Morse code. A different kind of SOS. Sentences went down in Titanic waves. The metaphor was solid, he thought to himself. This book is broken and sinking fast. And like all those that drown and grasp for any purchase they can find, Tom touched his face. It helped him to get to where he was. His face, his voice, his thoughts on a page, rendered from sentences. It is a rare thing indeed to get a front row seat to the excitement of creation. We are lucky. Unconsciously, Tom sniffed the bandage on his little finger. It smelled like plastic and hand soap. The bandage was getting loose, messing up the typing, a little dirty. He smelled again for signs of grossness and twirled the gooiness of it back and forth. He would call these antics madness, but he was getting close to his goal. Thinking, tossing ideas around in the sticky mess of his brain. The cut on his finger appeared last night, distracted as per usual, slicing tomatoes, and the blade had stung in, just by the nail, quick and stingy. He'd been thinking about wolves or grapes or something, anything but the book or me sitting in the corner, screaming, "Stop! Look out!" He sniffed the bandage again. Nothing to worry about, he thought. No infection, nothing to stress over. Well, a lot to stress over. He placed 9 fingers on the keyboard, the pinky held high and dignified and brandishing a head wound. I managed to make it across the floor past the dog and up the side of the bookcase so I could get a better view. He sighed, settled into his chair and tried again. More SOS signals. The Earth had business, and we weren't on the list. Ugh, he said. I chirped, close, but not good. He didn't hear it. Then a buzzing came from far off. Ugh, another lost thought for Tom. Arg! The sound came from a small plane, overhead and clearly off course. Another distraction. For a brief second, he let himself hate it for buzzing the shoreline. I could tell by the wrinkle in his brow, that serious look he gives when he's irritated. I was frustrated for him, but he was getting closer. Tom looked down at the keyboard and then gazed out the window, taking visual ownership of the ocean, the stretch of shoreline, and everything else beyond his hill. A shaft of sunlight warmed his face. Outside, soft grass was caught in a windy conversation, and it tickled the horizon as his eyes slid down the big hill to the ribbon of highway and the rocks and the vast blue beyond. It was a postcard panorama, the kind of California vista that pioneers must have stood awestruck upon seeing, I bet. He could feel their ghosts. He could feel the presence of its power from his chair. So could I. Not long ago, half of Los Angeles had burned. Friends' homes lost. It was tragic. I felt his pain. Their pain. He looked outside where the 5 elements converge. Earth, air, wind, fire, and water. The air, the, quote, ethers, he described in interviews, the manna from which breath comes and words are spoken. Tom had built a temple from those words and sentences. Fame brought abundance, and over time, his success provided much-needed privacy more than publicity. And that's what he needed the most these days. The ability to leave crowded spaces and to come to this sanctuary was a gift that did not go unnoticed by him or David. The years had seen Tom drift from purpose to calling to contemplation. But lately, and for good reason, that had all turned upside down. It's one of the reasons why I showed up to help. Let me describe the surrounding. There is a beautiful 2-story Cape Cod house, and next to it this wonderful barn and office where we sit. Outside, 2 guest cottages, a hen house with 4 chickens named after diner waitresses, Maud, Shirley, Betty Sue, and Phyllis. Yes, I steer clear of the chickens. Stop interrupting. All of that is 23 acres plus a vineyard. It's all called Christmas Hill. Together, Tom and David built a wildlife preserve of collected sentences, art, people, plants, plans, and purpose. Tom looked miles below to the sand, where the waves were ushering in their deposits. He had walked that sacred shoreline only the day before, with one of the 5. Battle-tested. 30-odd years now, Kellie. Look in my portal. Can you see them walking? Our whale was in the cove yesterday, he said. Maybe we'll see him again today. The silence broke for her response. I love that you live in a place where sentences like that are possible, Kellie said, thoughtfully, and she smiled at him hard, her hair caught in her teeth. He thought he'd steal that sentence later. She'd saved his life a time or two. What rhymes with 2 + 2? Chirp? That's me in the corner. Tom was distracted, thinking, cricket in the corner, drats. Oh well, his memory slipped away on quiet, slippered feet. Chirp. Okay, so that's chapter 3. And a couple things. One, my friend Mary asked me once, what is the value of vibrating at the frequency of resistance? And I love that line. And I put it in here because Tom's not ready to ask a question like that. I mean, he's asking all these profound questions, but he's not ready for that yet. And his answer, it's a quantum thing. That's an Easter egg. Also, infinity plus one is the most thoughtful of gifts, I sang to him. That's also an Easter egg. I hate to point these things out as they come along. I probably won't moving forward, but I hope you can figure that clue out. I think it was funny that the book begins once upon a Tom, okay? And then he comes down here and he writes once upon a time. I've done that myself. I mean, I've gone cheap. Sometimes I purposefully write something really bad just to show that I can do it. And then write something really good. The reference to the Titanic, a different kind of SOS sentences went down in Titanic waves. That's a nod to my dear friend Kristen and our time spent promoting the Titanic exhibition in the past. What's the idea with the bandage? It's sort of grounding, also gives you a sense of more of his personality. It's true, that's what I do. I sniff my bandage to make sure it doesn't stink. If it does, I'm not on top of taking care of it. So that's a real thing. And people do laugh at me about doing that. I have envisioned Christmas Hill very close to what I already have. I'm very happy to be able to live by the ocean and have a bit of a view of the bay and the boats. It's very important to me. And this projected reality is where I want if I'm not there now, then I want a part of me to be there now. And that's where my character is. My character lives on this beautiful hill, quite a few, 8-10 miles from town. But he can see all the way down. So it's a pretty big hill. He can see all the way down to the ocean. My dear friend Kellie came to visit me once, and this was before I wrote this book. I was still struggling with my mom's passing. I was struggling with my behavior and how I responded to my mother's passing and the traumatic events that followed it. And so we're talking about joy, and I said I want to recapture that sense of peace inside myself. And I said, "Oh, by the way, there was a whale in our cove yesterday. Maybe we'll see him today." And that was her response. I love that you live in a place where sentences like that are possible. So, like my character, I borrow sentences all the time from people, and Kellie has saved my life a time or two. She's a very dear person to me. The character Kellie is composed of two different people, Tanya and Kellie, and maybe a smattering of other, Kristen and Doreen and Sherry, lots of my very close friends, Nikki, Nicole. You might find yourself here. I hope that you find yourself somewhere in the book, especially towards the end where we get to more characters and more Santa Claus stuff. In the meantime, our character Tom's got a lot of thinking to do, and he is tossing ideas around in the sticky mess of his brain. Yesterday, Tim and I talked about the creative process, and we were watching Project One Way All Stars, and one of the finalists was absolutely stumped, and really the pressure, everything was getting to him, and his head was spinning off. And that is so typical of people who produce great work. And perhaps it's because we self-check ourselves to ensure that, I'm not bringing content for any other reason than to touch you, to share a perspective with you that might help you on your journey. That's it. And so I think there's a lot of integrity in that. And this character, I believe, had a lot of integrity in himself, because he was not ready to produce any work that was subpar. And eventually he got where he needed to go. We always get where we need to go. Just when we think all is hopeless, in a quiet moment, when we give up on that madness, an answer comes to us. It's the craziest thing. As a writer, I welcome it. I really do. My character says artists that lay claim to their own work, are sort of charlatans. And I believe that's because where did Einstein draw his thoughts? Where did Mozart pull composition out of the air? The ethers. The 5 elements. One of them includes air, not wind, air, ether. And this, I think, is infinite intelligence. It's accessible, it's like the internet. It's a wave that's out there, and you can tap into it. If you diminish your ego and you do things with intention, then you can tap into this thing. There may be other ways, but that's what works for me. And it's almost as if I channel ideas, like a galactic library, if you will, and you take a book off the shelf and you read it and you write in the margins liner notes about your perception of that and your perspective. And then somebody else takes that book off the shelf and they go, wow, okay, well, that's really cool. Well, here's my perspective, And so while the foundation of the idea may be sort of shared, the expression of that idea is something else entirely different that requires an individual. And that's what's copyrightable, is a person's expression of an idea. There's nobody else doing that. Even people who copy other people. I mean, it's evident. That art is truth in so many ways. Art is dangerous, and art is beautiful and kind, and it's disruptive, and it's thought provoking, and it's worth the time and effort. I like to tell people that I am an art school dropout who graduated from the College of Engineering, and I basically have made art for a living for my whole life. How does that make sense? Because there's a science to art. Art and science live right next to each other. I mean, they are dorm mates. And art might be on the sofa smoking a doobie, but that's art's role, Art's role is to be different thing and unexpected, maybe smoking a doobie, but also has a PhD in theoretical math, quantum mechanics, whatever. I love that. So if you're getting anything from this, it's an author's sincere desire to share with you the creative process, because while you may not write a book, you live a life, you have family, and you have things you want to get done. So I really think it does apply. Your head will spin off sometimes, but you put 2 and 2 together, you see patterns. If you're observant, you see repetition of pattern, and then you start to think about probability, and then you start thinking about science, and then you start painting, and there's an integration between your painting expression and the neural network of the human brain that you didn't even realize was coming out of you. That wasn't what you intended to do when you sat down. Maybe you had intended to paint something else. I'm also a painter, and I painted a series of canvases with these rectangles that come at you. They're like frames, but they're not perfect. They're just haphazardly drawn, and they fade out and fade in. And the idea was about memories and about packets of time. My aunt at the time was suffering from Alzheimer's, and that was where the first impulse came from, was the preciousness of these memories and how some of them get discarded. And I rubbed them out. I painted these beautiful, beautiful layers of rectangles, only to splash yellow paint on half of it, smear it around, and to fade some of them out. Do you know what kind of courage it took to do that? I used to be a representational artist. I used to paint very tight realism. People would say, oh my God, I know that place. The flowers were perfect, and I just labor over the intense details. And then when I started painting in a more abstract fashion, a more visceral, emotional, it was harder. It was harder because Well, first of all, the vastness of choice. What are you going to do? But also how to do it, and how to express it in a way that doesn't feel gimmicky or doesn't match some, is just a poor copy of somebody else's thing. But how can you come up with a creative idea, where and turn things on their ear, Anyway, those are my thoughts for this chapter. And what do I mean by a chirp in time saves 9? Well, this is his 9th novel. That's all I got to say. Anyway, thanks for joining me on Storytime. And I hope you're enjoying Santaland so far. I hope you tune in again and listen to more episodes while I ramble on and on. Anyway, I have a great deal of admiration if you're here and you're listening for you. So thank you. Until next time.